The big thing about nature preaching balance is you've got to have a balanced system. And we have an imbalanced system in a lot of ways. But one of the imbalances that's coming to the fore right now is the food production, distribution, and stores. Stores meaning stored food. So we're in a crisis situation that very few are aware of. There's a soybean shortage right now as we speak. There's also a lot of dislocations throughout the animal husbandry sector, meaning the food chain in meat, and that's rather significant. There's been a rather dramatic push toward a vegan type of diet, and that's been pushed. I'm going to remain neutral. I have a daughter that is, so I'm certainly not going to say right or wrong. I think it's an individual choice, but I don't think some government should mandate what it is. So there's a lot in that sector that needs to be looked at, and I was one of the early voices in the wilderness talking about food problems going forward, and here they are right in front of us. China's basically importing almost everything that they can get their hands on. The food bank situation in the United States is critical. I think the main outfit's called Feed America. Don't quote me, you can look it up. And I just watched a video recently for this interview, and it said that there would be about $1 billion shortage money-wise for that program through this year. In other words, the amount of food that's available, that's in their shelves ready to hand out, is very minimal at this point, and they're going to need more and more as time goes on. So I'm not trying to get everyone upset. I'm not trying to be a doomer. I'm just trying to give you some facts
right.
to dig deeper in. But there's nothing more critical for everybody, left, right, or in between. No matter what nation state you adhere to or dislike, we all have to eat. And one last comment on that, and this is from personal observation, and I'll pick on the Americans. There's a lot of obesity in America, and it's, in my view, I hate to blame. I'm not a victim type mentality by a long shot. Anyone that knows me can verify. But to some degree, it isn't our fault, which means to some degree, there are a lot of people that are overfed and undernourished. I mean, there's something like over 40 countries in the world that will not allow GMOs. In America, not only do they allow GMOs, they allow the fact that you don't even have to put GMOs on the label. So there's a lot of, let's say, less than optimized nutrition going in throughout our society. And I find that to be really disheartening in so many ways. So I don't want to dwell on the food factor over and over, but I wanted to voice it because, David thinks a lot more than just about the silver market.
It's interesting because I feel we've spoken so much in the past about, you need silver and solar panels. I think the difference this time is, okay, now we might actually see this happen on an extremely large scale. So how much silver do you think we'll need more than from numbers we're at now? What can you tell us about supply in silver today and where you could see it in 5 years?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. In fact, I've got them written down, but I'm not going to pick up the notebook and hide my face. Not that might be an improvement, but I did a look recently on solar, and really all the silver that exists right now, if we used it to solar panels with the current technology, would not be sufficient to give us the lifestyle we have. So in other words, if we devoted every ounce of silver to solar production of energy, it would help, but it wouldn't alleviate the problem. So the renewables aren't that renewable. Being an engineer, I think things through a little bit differently because I'm trained to think this way. But solar panels good for 10 or 15 years. A wind turbine, maybe 10, although it's advertised longer. So that's a large, what's called a sunk cost in finance. It's when you put up a McDonald's, your sunk cost is what the real estate and the building cost you. That's sunk, that's what you got to pay. You might put it on margin, you might get a loan to do it, but nonetheless, it's a sunk cost. So now in order to make a profit, you've got to pay off that sunk cost over time and depreciate it, and then sell your product, which is hamburgers coming out the window or whatever. In the solar industry, obviously it's electricity, and the wind, it's obviously electricity, but there's a price to pay. And the only way to understand it properly is to look at how much energy it takes to build that solar panel, to transport that solar panel, to install that solar panel, and then depreciate it over the life of that solar panel and find out how renewable it is. So where's your break even? When do you get all of your costs back?
Right.
And when do you start getting quote unquote free energy? And when does that free energy run out? I'll say one more thing, because I've thought about this before the interview. It's as if you had a car with a very large gas tank. If you had to go in and fill up, and you only filled it up once, and it was good for 10 years of driving, is that a renewable source? No, not really. Eventually you're going to have to refill up. It's the same thing. Will the sun stop shining? No, that is renewable forever. It's to capture it, that platform, as today's technology. I'm not saying we couldn't see some huge breakthrough in solar and all of a sudden it costs 1/10 the amount and it's 10 times as efficient. I don't see that, but I won't rule it out. So I want to be clear. But right now it's not going to save us.
David, how far has the mining industry come in terms of being cleaner? There's so much talk about ESG, but if we look at, the Green New Deal and solar panels, how much damage has to be done to extract that silver to then try and help the planet in another fashion?
Better than we were. The U.S., anyone working in the jurisdiction of mining laws that are basically U.S. or Canadian based, are quite cognizant of the environmental impact. In fact, you have to do an environmental impact study before you can get a permit. So like in Mexico, you basically have to bring it back to nature times two. I mean, what I've been told, I haven't verified this for quite a few years, but if you go into a situation and you mine, when you leave, the mine is closed down, you basically bring it back to the way it looked before. Same thing in the United States. The problem is that the World Trade Organization gave China a free pass. And most of your rare earth elements, and silver isn't a rare earth element, but it's still the number one technology metal by far, more than any other REE, believe it or not. Sorry, I had to get that in. That they can do basically anything they want. And that's why they have the huge pollution problem they have in Beijing and all these other factories, because it's more efficient profit-wise to be a dirty miner than it is to be a clean miner. And they've caught, let's call it the Keynesian disease, an unconscious capitalism where everything is at the bottom line profit rather than doing it right, doing it clean, doing it as effectively and efficiently as possible with respect for what we inhabit. So, I'm obviously pro mining. If you can't mine it and you can't eat it or grow it, you've got to mine it. It's critical. Nothing's really more critical for this society than the silver market. It's essential in so many ways. Nonetheless, we've got to be a lot more efficient. And the last thing I'll do of a plug is recycling. We're coming a lot stronger in the recycling because there's so much metal above ground, iron ore, copper, tin, aluminum, the precious metals, that we really have to get on board the most efficient way to get those metals back out because they're already above ground and reuse them. We have to really start thinking like the old Yankee ingenuity, use it up and rebuild it and reuse it. We've got to be a lot more grounded in our move going forward.